are really excited to have Ilene Sipp on the podcast today. Ilene's journey is incredible. She made the bold switch from the fast-paced world of ER nursing to becoming a dedicated nurse coach. During the pandemic, she discovered her true passion, helping nurses overcome burnout and navigate the intense challenges of healthcare. In this episode, Ilene gets candid about burnout, the urgent need for better communication, and the powerful impact coaching can have on nurses' lives. Her honest, energetic approach highlights why our healthcare systems need to evolve and how nurses can reclaim their strength and purpose.
Ilene,
Yes.
how is it going?
It is going well. How are you?
You're looking great today, every day.
Oh, thank you. You're a charmer. I love it.
So we connected through the LinkedIn. You were very active and you came across my posts every time, and I recognize you, how you are passionate about the community and very powerful toward the new generation of nurses and full of energy. Then we came more to more close together until we came today for the podcast. So on daily basis, you are in my schedule. We were communicate together through the LinkedIn. So for who don't know Ilene, tell us who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Ilene Sipp. I was an ER nurse for 15 plus years. And when the pandemic came along, I came home to take care of my kids. I have 3 children. They are currently 14, 13, and 10. And my husband is an ER physician. When the pandemic came and we really didn't know what we were fighting, I decided that I would come home and kind of manage the kids. And while I was home, I was like, how can I level up in nursing? For so long, I just felt like we were putting Band-Aids on bullet holes in the emergency room. We would see so many people repetitiously, the chronic illness and just all of these things. And I was like, why in this time of year, are we not doing more about preventative measures? So while I was home during the pandemic, I obtained my BSN and I came across nurse coaching. I decided to sign up for the course and then later was certified as a nurse coach through the American Holistic Nurses Association. And from there, I connected with a nurse coach at a local hospital who said the hospital has a program where they are looking to support the employees and they're looking for coaches. So I was able to connect with them. And then I just started connecting with nurses and physicians, and I just grew to really love supporting this community. I just find there's such a vacuum for the support that's out there. So often they're encouraged, especially nurses, just encouraged to run yourself into the ground. It doesn't matter at what cost, as long as you're showing up. And so I love the ability to connect, offer them tools to decrease their burnout, as well as enjoy their personal life. You shouldn't just be a nurse and then that's your only identity. You're a human being. You have a family 9 times out of 10. You have dreams and aspirations of your own. And so often nursing is just a soul-sucking, career choice. It's not how we go into it, but a lot of times that's how we feel. So I just find it really important to let nurses know it doesn't have to be that way. So much of how we feel is in our control. And I love the opportunity to share that with them.
Lovely. Thank you for that. It's very interesting journey, and still you are a giver and you try to uplift all the community around you. One of the things it came to my attention that when you started the coaching, you started because you had experience as a burnout. So that motivate you not to stay in the same, journey or same feeling as a burnout. You take the lead to make the change for yourself, for your family, and for the others. So tell me how you fight your burnout first, and then how you move to support other nurses.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like the pandemic was almost a blessing for me because it forced me out of my comfort zone. So I remember walking into the time clock feeling like we were marching ants, and just being micromanaged at times, not so much in the emergency room, but I also was working in a outpatient radiology department. And it was just, there wasn't a lot of autonomy. In the emergency room, we tend to have a lot of autonomy. And then when you go into floor nursing, it's completely different. I had a really hard time with that. I had a really hard time with being told to do more with less. Like, you have all these grand ideas of talking to your, like, I would get in trouble for talking to my patients too long. Like there was a schedule, they had things that had to happen, but it was like, you want people to feel comfortable. They're not feeling their best. You want them to know they're in good hands and you hold them in the highest regard. I had a really hard time with like assembly care nursing. So when the pandemic came about, I was really determined to figure out how I could do something different. Initially, I thought I was going to go through nurse coaching and maybe work in a cardiology office and like teach women and teach about heart health and what should you be eating and how should you be exercising and how can I help you improve your life. But it's so interesting how it just took a turn when I got connected with the hospital. And I just happened to be that they were sending me mostly nurses and physicians to speak with. They were seeking help. And the other thing is too, it was hard for them, those nurses and doctors, to ask for help because they're so worried about confidentiality. Why is an organization offering me a space to get coached? They worry about that. So I was really, really pleased to be able to offer them that space and that confidential, container so they felt that they could express it. One of the things that I noticed is when I started coaching, I just felt so much more alive again. Kind of like when I first started in nursing, right? Like you get that nursing degree, you pass your NCLEX and you're like, all right, I can save the world now. I'm ready.
Mm.
And then you get into it 3 years in, you're
one
like,
year, 2 years, then we will turn down.
right. Yeah, I know, right? Like it doesn't take long. And you're just like, this isn't what this nursing is so different than the movies. This isn't what I expected. So yeah, so while I loved ER nursing, like this just made me feel like, oh my gosh, I can actually help people and it's on my own terms, on my own time. I don't have to watch my P's and Q's. I can be real with people. It just felt really freeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because now you start to feel more about giving, and the main characteristic for the nurses, they are giver, and you are not giving for someone weak, someone like you, and I will not say weak, but they need a need for your support. And the patient, they came and asked for help. As you mentioned, it's very hard for healthcare provider and professional to request this kind of help. So what? Let's take it in a different way. If there is no pandemic, how you see your life? You'll stay in the ER?
It's a really good question. I often wonder about that. I feel like I would have played it safe. Maybe if I didn't stay in the emergency room, I would have, found somewhere else in the hospital to work because it was really hard to imagine. Nurses don't go into business for themselves. Nurses never get encouraged to do something other than bedside. Nurses, like, am I still a nurse if I'm not in the hospital? So because of the pandemic, that's when I started seeking out outside of nursing itself. And honestly, I don't know that I would have done that if it wasn't for the pandemic. I'm a firstborn, so we play it safe. But like trying to do something out of the box is really scary and uncomfortable, and people look at you like you're crazy. So it's just different. But yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't know that I would have ever done anything different.
Which is fair enough, but at least you fight hard to extend and to push your boundaries. And now here we go with good representation for you in digital space, and also your voice is very high, and you have unpopular opinion most of the time. Most of the time, I see you came with different background. You are try to not find the excuse to stay with the comfort zone. Try to push hard positively for sure. The everyone around you to not put any excuse. So today, for example, I had a boss, and what I see from you, there is no excuse for not taking care for yourself. You need to be the fighter. So this is somehow in the nursing, they prefer. I started to realize this, and this is my own opinion. So they start I feel they not start. They overall they prefer to complain but not to take the change. So from your experience as a coach, do you see this from your perspective, or this is only how I see it?
No, the path of least resistance is to complain about everything. It's when we have to start coming up with solutions, people start backing away. They love the sound of their own voice, but when it comes time to create change, they don't want to be ostracized for having an opinion or a suggestion. So they kind of back away from that and they just hope somebody else will change things up. When I get to meet with people, I remind them how much power they have. One of my personal opinions is I feel like organizations want us to play small. They want us to feel uncomfortable raising our voice because then they can manipulate us. But if we get together and we start having ideas of our own, we show up as the nurses who've been trained with science backgrounds, and we're advocates for our patients. Like, for so long, society has seen us as like a junior executive to the physician, when truly we're players. Like, when you have a nurse and doctor caring for a patient, we're on the same level in the sense that we talk it out. Like, I understand where if the physician is offering me like his plan of care or her plan of care for a patient, then I can volley back and share my thoughts. And together we can give that patient the best possible care. So many nurses are so afraid to live in their voice. They're so afraid that they're going to be ostracized, or, oh gosh, what's the word when you don't, insubordinate. Like, you could be insubordinate to physicians, when it's like, we don't work for the physician, we work for the patient. So how can we work together? And one of the things that I love about coaching is giving nurses the tools to start the conversations with the physicians, whereas maybe before they felt, I don't want to say second class, but they felt like they didn't have as much say in the care as the patient. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to be honest, you are speaking and I'm thinking about that. So I tried to remember, I found her name. So there is a lady and she is economist and author called Grace Blakely, I think. She is a Britain. So one of the things she mentioned, why the new thread or the new trend came from the government worldwide with the capitalism to encourage us to be entrepreneur. The point from her side, and it was interesting for me, it is the first time I see exactly why the government encourage us, all of us, to be entrepreneur and give us tax benefit for that. So her point of view, which she convinced me, her point of view, the government, they don't want the population to be united. They want them to be competing each other, because if they united, they will lobbying, they will have union, they will fight on them, and they don't want that. They want them to take care for themselves and to compete each other. Who will win will be the survivor and the successor. Who will not win, they will blame them, the community will blame them. You are not good enough to do that. While you are talking about the hospital and how the stereotype between the nurses and physician, between the nurses and the pharmacists, it's give me that intention for the first time. Everyone know there is a real competition and there is no teamwork between healthcare professional. However, we try to hide it, we try to improve it, and this is the good things, but it is there, it is fact. So you like open a light in my head. Yeah, you are right. So yeah, I think yeah, in the education system, how we trained mainly how to communicate with the patient. However, still there is a huge gap between us and the patient, but we don't see effective way and tool and technique in the school how to communicate between each other, between us as a nurses, between me and my leadership, between me and the physician. This is something, it's built on the experience. I expect the school cannot train me in everything, but at least to give me the foundation. This foundation is not there.
1,000%. So if it was a perfect world, I would, hope to see nursing schools embracing emotional intelligence, where we first and foremost, we learn how to speak to each other. For thousands of years, nurses get eaten by those who have been nurses for a long time. Why do we shoot ourselves in the foot like that? I've
How many
never,
nurses you eaten?
none, none, never in a million years. And it happened to me. And so you never want anybody else to me. And I feel like it starts in nursing school. Like, how do we talk to each other? Right. And then the second thing is, how do we handle a disagreement? So I don't know about you, but so many times in the ER, I would question orders, or I would be like talk to a certain way. And at first you take it, and then, a couple of years in, you're like, I don't have to take this. And so if in nursing school we learn how to communicate when there's a disagreement without being a jerk about it, then we come out on top 9 times out of 10. Sometimes you're just going to have that person who's just not a nice person. But at least you're in integrity. At least you're in alignment with your values, speaking up for your patient, and you have science to back you up, or you have literature to back you up. Then you can do it in a calm and professional way versus an emotional way. And so that is something that I think is so important, not only in nursing schools to teach, but in leadership. And it's so weird because I hear emotional intelligence referred to as a soft skill. Are you kidding me? If you can communicate with somebody, think of all the problems you can solve. Think about all the hurt feelings you can ignore or get past. Think of all the disagreements that, okay, we'll agree to disagree, but in the meantime, here's why I'm saying this. And I want to get really curious about why you're saying this instead of being defensive. Because when we're defensive, we don't hear anything anybody says. All we hear are the thoughts that we can't wait to say when it's our turn to speak. And nothing gets solved.
So one of the statement when you started, you mentioned you start to work with the hospital. They hire you to coach their staff. And this is something I see it is a good move from the leadership hospital. And that at the same time, the staff, they are curious. Why they hire someone to speak about our frustration and burnout? This is weird. So because they are not used to it to came from the employer, most of the time they think this is their own responsibility to take care for their psychological status and psychological mental health. So what make that hospital to consider this is one of the things we need to invest in our staff?
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what it was that sent them in this direction, because I believe the coaching program started probably in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And it's not just for nurses and doctors, it's for the entire organization. So janitors, computer whizzes, anybody can come and get coaching. I've just specifically asked to work with the nurses and the physicians. Like, that's just my favorite. But I think a couple of reasons. So initially, I believe it was started as like a wellness coaching. So kind of like, what are you eating? Are you sleeping? Not so much like the burnout scenario. I think kind of seeing a person as a whole being. So like, how's your spiritual wealth? How's your emotional wealth? So I think it was more of like that. And it's kind of just grown into this where nurses and doctors are like, maybe you can help me because I'm really struggling. So I think it started off as more of like a health coaching. And the other thing is it's much easier to say, oh, hey, everybody, we're doing something for our employees. We're helping them be resilient versus let's change our systems. Let's make some different sort of scenarios for nurses and doctors to work in. Let's make some changes at the systemic level or systematic level versus individually, right? So in a way, like on one hand, I'm so grateful that this service is available. But on the other hand, I wonder, are we not digging deeper and seeing how we could maybe change up some leadership ideas or change up the way we do things? I mean, in nursing, it's not uncommon to hear from a manager, well, we've always done it this way, so this is what we're doing. So I often wonder, like, okay, so we're coaching and we're giving people, tools to sort of manage what they're doing. But at the same time, shouldn't we be reevaluating what's going on behind the scenes? Like, how do our systems work? How can we be more of a team? How can we increase team dynamics versus splitting so many of us, right? Like, how can we get nurses and doctors in a room together and admit we're all there for the same reason? We want the patient to do well. So how do we work together to do that, right?
So just to make it clear for me, so the hospital, not necessarily that hospital you work with them, but from your experience, when the hospital came and make a contract with the coach, so that contract, they will offer support for their staff. So you will go or the coach will go and work with their staff. Later on, is there any kind of communication between the hospital leadership and the coach to give them a recommendation about how they can improve their own internal system, or to get feedback overall? What is the themes from the staff you work with them as a coach, and if there is something as a out, let's say out of the box or a third party notice something you would like to share with us. Is this is something it's happening, or that's still too early to approach this level of the, let's say, comprehensive solution or holistic solution when it's coming for coaching between the coach and the organization?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as of right now, when I work with a client, it's just the client and myself. So I don't report back to anybody. I don't share any ideas from the coaching calls. It's really just a personal container between myself and the client. I hope at some point to be able to connect with some of the, the higher leaders in the organization and maybe offer some suggestions or maybe offer some programs. I personally am just not there yet. I feel like I'm still kind of getting some data under my belt so that I have something, because, you want to show up with like some numbers as to, is the coaching working? And in the coaching department, there are leaders in my department who are crunching those numbers so that we have something to show to say that our program is viable and it's doing great. Something that gives me a lot of hope is we've started some pilot programs where we're starting to do nursing leadership pilot programs. So specifically working with leadership, and they're creating some of the coaches are doing some group coaching. So that's been kind of cool, hopefully to create community in between the leaders. So maybe they can have more ideas and a space to like grow and learn from one another, whereas maybe they didn't talk as often on like a granular level of what they're doing on their floors. So I feel very hopeful that we're going in the right direction. Like any sort of change, it just moves at a
Yes, take
glacial
time.
pace.
I'm looking for this is not to explicit or to exposure the client data and privacy at all, or confidentiality. I'm looking for that, like the same concept of secret chopper, where they hire someone to go and to take the services as a normal client or as a normal patient and discover what is the gap and come back and report this
Mm,
just for sake for improvement without blaming or fingering.
yeah,
So this is
yeah,
what I'm looking for, that if the hospital have that mindset, so they pass a good way or half a way in order to do the improvement. So as a coach, the coach will be well trained and will give them the high level of the themes overall from the sample he or she work with them, because other coaches still will they will have. So maybe if you are working with one department, you will notice maybe the admission process, again we're talking about the system, not me, the admission process
yeah.
is seem suck, we need to revisit it, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like because more leaders are getting involved in coaching, I feel like that's going to happen at some point. At some point, the higher ups will be like, hey, what are you seeing? What are some scenarios? Like, what are you thinking? Do you have anything to offer? I feel very hopeful. I love that this organization is one of the very few that I know that offer coaching to their employees. So I feel like they're already forward thinking. I feel like they're already open to ideas. So that gives me a lot of hope. And I have some colleagues or some friends that graduated nurse coaching with me who are actually going to hospital systems and meeting with the corporations and looking for ways to retain nurses. It's really exciting. Just kind of making it up as they go with how they speak to them, and, they bring stats to the table, how coaching helps, decrease burnout and how it helps to retain nurses. There's one nurse coach who actually started a program where she's created a room where nurses can go to decompress. They are playing, meditations. The lighting is really low. They have aromatherapy going. They have music playing. So it's just a space where a nurse can just kind of unwind if she steps away from the floor for a minute. And to me, that's such a gift, because you know how it is. Sometimes you get a break, sometimes you don't. And you're a completely different person if you do take 10 minutes away from your patients and just decompress for a minute. You come back a completely different person. And that comes back to one of the things that we can control. And so when I work with clients, I give them an out. So like on their worst possible day, I give them like a 5-minute exercise to just regulate their nervous system. So whether it's hiding out in the med room, whether it's hiding out in the bathroom, they can use it wherever. If they feel out of control, if they feel like they're reacting to everything instead of pausing and considering how they want to respond, whether it's to patients or to physicians or other healthcare workers, this gives them power to be able to kind of just take it down a notch and continue their day.
Yeah, interesting. So here you help me to bring with a new question for you. Do you think if I am a nurse and I want to work with a coach, necessarily for this coach to be a nurse, or any coach can work with me?
Any coach can work with you. So we have in our organization, we have 3 nurse coaches, I believe. And then we have like wellness coaches, 3 or 4 wellness coaches. So a lot of times the nurses will ask to work with another nurse, but I'm fully confident that the other coaches can serve them well too. But there's just something, to me, special about nurses because we get it. We've been there. There's something so comforting knowing that, you can still love being a nurse even if you're not at the bedside, and see that we're still learning, we're still evolving, we're
I
still
am here.
serving.
I am here. Yes, you are right.
Right?
Yeah. So what does make you a good coach? It is the education you take to be a coach, or the experience you have during the coaching?
That is such a good question. Let me think about that for a second. First and foremost, I think in order to be a good coach, you have to have done a lot of the work yourself. I think you have to have grown. I think you have to have learned how to, regulate your not immune system, but regulate your central nervous
Emotional.
system. Right. I think you need to know how to have conversations. I think you need to know how to bring a presence to the coaching call. I think it's really important to be able to sit in those moments of uncomfortableness. Like when you ask somebody a question and they say, I don't know, and to be able to just sit there until the words come to that client. It's so easy. I think as nurses, we want to solve everything. We want to answer everybody's question. We want to give them a to-do list, right? And with coaching, the beautiful thing is that person already has all the answers. They just need the space to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, and
So
a good question for them just to activate their curiosity. As you mentioned, they have all the solution and they have all the answer, but they need
yeah.
someone to encourage them to think about it.
Well, if you think about it, when you share your thoughts about something, even with your best friend, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say something back, but then bring it back to something they experienced. Not because they don't care about you, but that's just kind of how you kind of interact. With coaching, that hour is all about you. With somebody who doesn't judge you, has no preconceived notions, just wants to hold you up while you decide what you need and how, and like I just ask you question after question and you figure it out as you go. I'm not telling you what to do because the transformation takes place when you have that like aha moment yourself. Anyone can do a Google search and learn how to lose 10 pounds, but if you don't know why you keep self-sabotaging yourself to lose that 10 pounds, that Google search isn't going to help you.
Yeah, you are right. And this has happened with me a lot with my client when I disconnect my thinking and my judgment. And this is the role of the coach, and ask a clean curiosity question like a kid's. Those questions, 90% of the time, they found the solution and they came across the aha moments, as you mentioned. How I'm not thinking about this? I've been in this situation years. How come this when from my side I did nothing? Just to try to open doors for them and they see the reality they live and they have. So as a coach, working with the nurses and physicians, from your perspective, what is the factors and cofactors make them burn in?
Make them, pardon?
Burning out.
Yes. Okay. So oh gosh, so many. So I've been doing this survey with all these people, all these nurses that I've met on LinkedIn. Oh my gosh, I'm loving it. I am learning so much. So some of the biggest things, of course, short staffing, right? Resistance to change. Like if something's not working and they're bringing it to management's attention and it falls on deaf ears, that's really upsetting. If there's a toxic employee that the manager won't deal with and just keeps giving you excuses while the rest of the staff has to like acclimate to this person who they either feel unsafe or uncomfortable around. So not only do the nurses suffer, but the patient care suffers. And that's really frustrating to nurses who are trying to do a
Ilene,
best
I
job.
want to stop you here before you continue, because this is point is not the first time it came to me through the podcast. Why the leadership sometimes they know there is someone troublemaker, okay, and someone here, he or she, and they know about it, and every time they try to give an excuse and not take any disciplinary action with them. From your experience, from your point of view, because this is not the first time, Kim. Why?
That's a really good question. And so I've been asking leaders about this because I'm like, I don't understand. And one of the things is they want everyone to like them. So a lot of times they struggle to punish or to put somebody in corrective action because they feel like that's going to give them a backlash. Sometimes they're afraid. I've had managers who eventually do put people in corrective action. This person will go to human resources and cause this huge hullabaloo. And the manager doesn't always have support from the higher ups. So that makes things really hard. So that manager gets kind of put between a rock and a hard place. And then some managers are just indifferent. They figure, I don't have to deal with it. So figure it out, put your big girl pants on, go out there and make it work, because it's much easier to have your whole staff deal with it than it is for you as a manager to reprimand or to correct or to take the time to coach that person. And so there's so many reasons.
So here, because still we are in the systematic factor and reason why the nurses and healthcare overall they get burned out. So you mentioned very good point where the line manager or intermediate level of managerial level, they are not empowered by their leader and they are stuck with their staff. So why they equip them or train them or request from them to be with good leadership skills, but at the same time they are not empowered? This is a systemic issue. So
yeah,
again, we take it for another level of if you can see, this is one of the roots where we have like a bug in the system, with all respect for our humanity, but this is bug of everyone know it is there, but no one want to fix it.
Yeah, it's like, why can't we all get on the same page? Why does it have to, every unit is different, right? And like, why does the person, like, I picture them sitting in like the ivory tower, right? Like the higher ups of the corporations, not seeing what's happening at the ground level. And because they're so far removed from it, they're not seeing the patients suffering. Like, for instance, consider this. If you're being trained by a nurse who's being horrible to you, and you are in a room with a patient and you don't know what to do because you're so afraid to go to that nurse and ask a question. Maybe this person's having chest pain, but you're afraid to say something to this nurse that's training you because she's already explained to you what you do with somebody having chest pain. You don't say anything as a new nurse, and that patient's in the middle of an acute myocardial infarction. Who's to blame, right? Like, why are we putting patients at risk by not taking the people who are causing a problem on the floors and giving them a chance to remediate, or giving them some training on how to communicate, or finding out what's going on at home? Maybe they're going through this horrible divorce and the only place they feel in control is at work, but they're taking their anger out on everybody. Like, how can we create an environment where nurses feel supported, even when crap's hitting the fan at home? But at the same time, we don't tolerate cruelty and meanness. You know what I mean? Like, how can we facilitate that?
We've covered some incredible ground today, but our conversation is far from over. In our next episode, we'll dive deeper and explore even more fascinating insights. Stay tuned for part 2 of our conversation on uncharted narratives.